Hello and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, hi, you're very welcome. This is Reading the Past and I'm Dr. Cat. Before we jump into today's topic, I want to say that I have been reading the comments on my last two videos, but I haven't had the chance to respond. Last week was a bit of a whirlwind because, among other things that were going on, Gabriel had a lovely first birthday, and I, on a different day, was back in costume for some historical interpretation. So it's all been very busy and exciting. I have caught sight of lots of supportive and interesting comments, for which I am very grateful. And I've also seen some of your brilliant suggestions for future videos, and rest assured, they are going on the list for the future. In the video before last, I asked whether a video on the line of monarchs, especially one focusing on their claim or claims to the throne, would be useful, and a lot of you told me you thought it would be in the comment section. So here we are. I have made videos about some of the characters who are about to be name-checked, which I will leave linked. And I'm going to be strict with myself and stay on the topic of succession. But I'm still pretty sure that this is going to end up being a long one, so grab a drink, a snack, and buckle up, I guess. We're going to be starting with William I, also known as William the Conqueror. Not because he is the first King of England, because that title belongs to Altheston, who, by conquest, managed to unify England in 927. However, as we're looking at monarchy, right to rule and royal succession, I do think William is the most logical starting point. One of the side effects of his conquest was the figurative declawing of the political body that has come to be known as the Witan, which, in addition to advising their monarch, had retained a traditional right to elect their successor. As an added factor, William is also where the numbering of monarchs begins. Prepare for the flagrant use of family trees. Let's dive in. From the 11th century, we will see that male preference primogeniture becomes the order of the day for inheriting the crown of England, which is then the crowns of England and Scotland, and eventually the crown of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland. The desired outcome is for the eldest son and his descendants to succeed to the throne of his father. In default of sons, a daughter may be acceptable, although her sex probably risks her being overlooked. In default of any children, siblings and then cousins may find themselves being called upon, with the males of those siblings and cousins coming in first. But as we will see, another way to claim the throne with arguable legitimacy was to seize it. Trial by ordeal was a time-honoured, legally recognised way to prove yourself to be in the right. God would only allow the rightful claimant to win a battle to claim the throne, surely. Unless, of course, God was looking to punish a nation for their sins, then it might be allowed for a tyrant to win out. Cries of tyranny are an incendiary accusation to level against a leader for this reason. As we move through time, perceptions of legitimacy or right to rule will be impacted and altered by other concerns. These shifts will be signposted today as we follow the crown on its journey from 1066 to the present. William, Duke of Normandy, was the first cousin once removed of Edward the Confessor, whose reign lasted between 1042 and 1066. Edward's marriage to Edith was childless. William would claim that Edward had promised the throne to him. Further, he would also claim that he had earned the sworn support of Edward's brother-in-law, Harold Godwinson. Edward died on the 4th or 5th of January 1066, and there are English sources that assert that Edward named Harold as his successor on his deathbed. The magnates of the land, the Witan, elected him. He was anointed as king with what has been referred to as unseemly haste on the 6th of January 1066. William would have to make good on his alleged claim to the throne by conquest. William and Harold's armies met near Hastings on the 14th of October 1066. By the end of the day, Harold would be dead, and William would be on his way to consolidate power by securing important towns and cities. He was crowned in Westminster Abbey on Christmas Day 1066. William's eldest son, Robert, had a fractious relationship with his father, with documented periods of estrangement. One of these coincided with William's final illness in September 1087. He died on the 9th of September. Robert succeeded his father as Duke of Normandy. His younger brother, who was his parents' second surviving son, succeeded to the throne of England as King William II. This may have been William conforming to a ducal tradition of providing for all of his sons. Alternatively, it's a power grab by a younger brother, or even a final act of spite by an estranged father. William II was crowned king at Westminster Abbey on the 26th of September 1087. He did not marry, so at his death, his frankly suspicious death that was named an accident, the king was shot, apparently in the heart, with an arrow while out hunting with friends in the New Forest on the 2nd of August 1100. His younger brother Henry was with the hunting party on that fateful day. That's probably unrelated though. But he was the next King of England. King Henry I was crowned swiftly at Westminster Abbey on the 5th of August 1100. From his first marriage to Matilda, Henry had his two legitimate children, his daughter, also named Matilda, and his son and heir William. On the 25th of November 1120, William was killed in the wreck of the White Ship. In the January of 1127, Matilda obtained oaths of allegiance from her father's bishops and magnates that she would be recognised as his heir and be the ruler after him. Their trustworthiness would be tested soon enough. Henry I died on the 1st of December 1135, and rather than wait for Matilda, her cousin, Stephen of Blois, travelled to England to stake his own claim to the throne. King Stephen was crowned at Winchester on the 22nd of December 1135, and Matilda, unsurprisingly, wasn't best pleased. What followed was a period of civil war that has been referred to as the anarchy, and a time when Christ and his saints slept. Matilda fought to assert her rights, and when her son Henry was old enough, he took up his mother's fight as well. Her claim to the throne was also his. Stephen's heir for the English throne had been his son Eustace, but he predeceased his father, which enabled an agreement to be reached that would end the civil war by recognising Matilda's son as Stephen's new heir. Stephen died on the 25th of October 1154. King Henry II ascended to the throne stolen from his mother, to be crowned on the 19th of December 1154. Henry was beset by family strife and, on occasion, outright rebellion, orchestrated by his wife and children, but spurred on by his own unyielding desire for control. He died, still in conflict with his family, on the 6th of July 1189. His eldest surviving son, and one of the main irritants, Richard, was crowned as King Richard I at Westminster on the 3rd of September 1189. Richard, known as the Lionheart, was keener on crusading than being in England, and he would die without a legitimate heir from a battle wound on the 6th of April 1199. Richard named his brother John as his successor. King John was crowned at Westminster on the 27th of May 1199. John was not a popular king, and he is not well thought of by some historians. In fact, after his death, which occurred during the night of the 18th to the 19th of October 1216, monastic writers seemed assured that he was on his way to hell. Nevertheless, John achieved something that many later monarchs could only dream of. He was succeeded on the throne by his son. Henry was just 9 years old when his father died. He was crowned as King Henry III at Gloucester Cathedral on the 28th of October 1216, and again, nearly 4 years later, at Westminster Abbey on the 17th of May 1220. He would reign for an impressive 56 years and would be succeeded by his son, Edward. Henry died on the 16th of November 1272, while his son Edward was on his way back from crusade. It would take Edward nearly 2 years to meander his way back to England to be crowned as King Edward I on the 19th of August 1274. This Edward also left a son to succeed him when he died on the 7th of July 1307. King Edward II was crowned at Westminster Abbey on the 25th of February 1308. And this king would also provide England with a son to succeed him. But that succession would not take the usual course. Edward II was brought down by his wife Isabella, her lover Roger Mortimer, and the barons who backed them. Captured by his enemies, Edward was encouraged to resign his throne in favour of his 14-year-old son, also called Edward. King Edward III was crowned at Westminster Abbey on the 1st of February 1327. His father died from people plotting to break him out of prison, essentially, reportedly on the 21st of September 1327. King Edward III was predeceased by his eldest son, Edward the Black Prince, who had, helpfully, before his death, provided his father with a grandson and heir. Edward III died on the 21st of June 1377, and he was succeeded by his 10-year-old grandson, Richard. King Richard II's coronation took place on the 16th of July 1377. As a boy king, he faced down the so-called Peasants' Revolt. With age, he became, or at least came to be viewed as, a tyrant. His removal from the throne is dated to the 29th of September 1399. He would be dead on or around the 14th of February 1400. His successor, or usurper, depending on your point of view, was his cousin, Henry Bolingbroke. He would be crowned as King Henry IV on the 13th of October 1399. Henry IV died on the 20th of March 1413. The next king was his son, King Henry V, who was crowned on the 9th of April 1413. Henry V was a few weeks shy of his 36th birthday when he died, on the 31st of August 1422. His heir was his 9-month-old son, also called Henry. King Henry VI was crowned at age 8 on the 6th of November 1429, and as his father had won the French crown as well, the boy king would need to be heading to France to be crowned king there too. In 1453, Henry VI experienced a mental health crisis, which some historians believe was caused by catatonic schizophrenia. Civil unrest and infighting within the nobility was able to bubble over. Henry VI is the Lancastrian king of the Wars of the Roses. On the 4th of March 1461, Edward, Earl of March, who, like Henry, could claim descent from Edward III, was crowned as King Edward IV. Soon, the new king fell out with his brother George and his cousin Richard, who is more commonly known as Warwick the Kingmaker. King Henry VI was thus returned to the throne on the 3rd of October 1470, but King Edward IV wasn't finished. He was back in London, returning Henry to imprisonment in the Tower and himself to the throne on the 11th of April 1471. The following month, on the 4th of May, Henry VI's wife Margaret was captured and his son Edward was killed at the Battle of Tewkesbury, and by tradition, Henry VI himself was killed in the Wakefield Tower in the Tower of London on the 21st of May 1471. Edward IV's son, also called Edward, was just 12 years old when his father died on the 9th of April 1483, and although he is remembered as Edward V, he was never crowned and was, in fact, declared to be illegitimate. He and his brother Richard, Duke of York, disappeared in 1483 while in the care of their uncle in the Tower of London. That uncle was crowned as King Richard III on the 6th of July 1483. Richard's reign ended at the Battle of Bosworth on the 22nd of August 1485. His rival was Henry Tudor, another descendant of King Edward III through John of Gaunt, although this time it was from John of Gaunt's extramarital relationship with Catherine Swynford, who he would later marry. So Henry Tudor's claim came through his mother, Margaret Beaufort. This Beaufort line was the one that had begun as an illegitimate one based upon an extramarital relationship that would later be legitimised. Henry VII's Lancastrian claim was tested and proved through the ordeal of battle, and any remaining tensions were eased through his marriage to Elizabeth of York, who was Edward IV's daughter. Henry was crowned on the 30th October 1485. He was succeeded by his second and only surviving son, also called Henry, following his death on the 21st of April 1509. King Henry VIII was crowned on the 24th of June 1509. As we know, Henry would obsess over providing England with a legitimate male heir who would be able to continue the dynasty. His son Edward was just 9 when Henry died on the 28th of January 1547. But King Edward VI was crowned on the 20th of February 1547. Edward's death, at just 15, on the 6th of July 1553, occurred before he had had the chance to marry and produce an heir of his own. Edward named his cousin's daughter, the Lady Jane Grey, as his successor. But it would be his eldest half-sister Mary who gained the popular support. Queen Mary I had a grand, triumphant coronation on the 1st of October 1553. Despite hoped for and announced pregnancies, no birth occurred. So Mary died without an heir on the 17th of November 1558. The crown duly passed to her half-sister Elizabeth, who was crowned as Elizabeth I on the 15th of January 1559, a date that was selected following astrological advice from Dr. John Dee. Elizabeth would rule for more than 44 years and would die, famously unmarried, without an heir, as England's Virgin Queen on the 24th of March 1603. She was succeeded by her first cousin twice removed, King James VI of Scots, who was crowned as King James I of England on the 25th of July 1603. James was left bereft when his eldest son Henry died at 18 years old in 1612, which left his brother Charles as the heir in his place. James himself died on the 27th of March 1625. His son was crowned as King Charles I at Westminster Abbey on the 2nd of February 1626, and as the crowns of England and Scotland remained separate at this point, his coronation as King of Scots would also be a separate affair, which took place on the 18th of June 1633. King Charles I was famously on one side, the losing side of the English Civil War, for which he would ultimately suffer the punishment reserved for noble traitors, namely beheading, on the 30th of January 1649. For a brief period, England had no king. Oliver Cromwell acted as Lord Protector until his death on the 3rd of September 1658, at which point, in a manner devastatingly like that of the hereditary monarchies, he was succeeded by his son, Richard. Richard Cromwell, who has been lampooned as Tumble Down Dick and Queen Dick, didn't hold his place for long. It was decided that it would be best to invite the executed king's son to return and take up the throne. King Charles II enjoyed a triumphant entrance into London on the 29th of May 1660. Charles II would have lots of children, but none by his wife. So when he died on the 6th of February 1685, he was succeeded by his brother James. King James II had made the unfortunate decision to publicly convert to the Roman Catholic faith, which was problematic for his role as head of the Church of England, and was also a matter of concern for some of his nobles. So much so that a group of them invited James's eldest daughter and her cousin husband, who were both helpfully Protestant, to come and take the throne from James. This period of conflict has come to be known as the Glorious Revolution. It's often praised for its lack of bloodshed in England, because there was lots of blood spilt in Ireland. But Mary II and William III were crowned as co-rulers on the 11th of April 1689. Their marriage would produce no surviving children. William ruled alone after Mary's death on the 28th of December 1694, until his own death on the 8th of March 1702. The next monarch was his sister-in-law and cousin, who was crowned as Queen Anne on the 23rd of April 1702. Anne would also die without a surviving heir to follow her, but following the Act of Settlement of 1701, the next monarch would have to be, by law, a Protestant. That monarch would also rule an entity that was known as the United Kingdom of Great Britain, following the Act of Union in 1707. Now, there were no longer English monarchs or English and Scottish monarchs, but simply British monarchs. Anne died on the 1st of August 1714, and the route to her successor is a more convoluted one due to the whole must be a Protestant thing. So we need to go back up the family tree of James VI of Scots and First of England. Then we need to follow the line of his daughter Elizabeth. She's known as the Winter Queen of Bohemia. With her husband Frederick, she produced Sophia of Hanover, who, until her death on the 8th of June 1714 was set to be the next Queen of England. Instead, it was her son who would be crowned as King George I of Great Britain and Ireland on the 20th of October 1714. The House of Hanover is famed for its infighting, but nevertheless, one male heir would still follow on from another with monotonous regularity. So George I's son would be crowned as King George II on the 11th of October 1727, after the former George's death on the 11th of June 1727. George II would be followed by his grandson, the child of his hated eldest son Frederick, who had predeceased his father on the 31st of March 1751. George II then duly died on the 25th of October 1760, allowing his grandson to then reign as King George III until his own death on the 29th of January 1820. Periods of mental instability tend to be the thing that characterise this reign in the minds of historians. And during the last of these, which began in 1811 and lasted until George III's death, his son served as Prince Regent. Eventually he was crowned as King George IV on the 19th of July 1821. This George's desperately unhappy marriage to Caroline of Brunswick had managed to produce one surviving child, the heir to the throne, Princess Charlotte. But while he was still Prince Regent, tragedy had already struck. Charlotte had died at 21 on the 6th of November 1817 from childbed complications, and as if to further the tragedy, she had delivered a stillborn son. The nation mourned with the family. An elaborate monument to the princess was even paid for by a public subscription. At once, the race was on for one of the Prince Regent's brothers to generate a replacement heir. The Duke of Kent, the fourth son of George III, set aside his mistress to marry the sister of Charlotte's widower. Princess Alexandrina was born at Kensington Palace on the 24th of May 1819. George IV died when she was 11, on the 26th of June 1830, but before this daughter of the Duke of Kent could mount the throne, her father's elder brother, who was George III's third son, would have to have his turn. King William IV's coronation took place on the 8th of September 1831. He would survive and reign for just long enough to ensure that there would be no need for there to be a regency for his niece and successor. Princess Alexandrina had celebrated her 18th birthday nearly 1 month before William's death, on the 20th of June 1837. It was her age that would enable her to reign without a regent or regents. She would be crowned as Queen Victoria on the 28th of June 1838. Queen Victoria is our second longest reigning monarch, and she is being beaten by our current queen, who is her great-great-granddaughter, Queen Elizabeth II. It is said that the sun never set on her empire, and in 1877 the Prime Minister of the day, Benjamin Disraeli, forced through a proclamation in Parliament to officially recognise her as Empress of India. This was a title that she had assumed and or been referred to by from perhaps as early as 1873. She was styled as Her Imperial Majesty the Queen, Victoria, by the grace of God of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland, Queen, Defender of the Faith, Empress of India. Victoria was 81 years old when she died, on the 22nd of January 1901. Her eldest son, Albert Edward, is alleged to have said, apparently to the Archbishop of Canterbury, after the service of celebration at St Paul's for Queen Victoria's Diamond Jubilee in 1897, quote, "I have no objection whatsoever to the notion of the Eternal Father, but every objection to the concept of an Eternal Mother." Victoria's capabilities as a mother were highly questionable with the children that she actually liked, and this one, Bertie, wasn't one of those. Bertie made the decision to reign as King Edward VII when he inherited his mother's throne and titles at 59 years old. His long-awaited coronation, at least it was for him, was due to take place on the 26th of June 1902, so he must have been livid when a bout of appendicitis struck a couple of days before that, which forced him to undergo emergency surgery. His big event had to be rearranged for the 9th of August. Nevertheless, he reigned for 9 years and died on the 6th of May 1910. His son succeeded him as King George V, and his coronation took place on the 22nd of June 1911. We may be spotting a gradual extension of the time between accession and coronation for these our later monarchs. I don't have the official reason for this, but I do want to offer a few potential ideas. So, number one, monarchs are now reigning rather than ruling. So their God-anointed authority is perhaps surplus to requirements for the day-to-day running of the nation. Two, as photography and film becomes increasingly democratised, they are already known to their subjects. It is arguably less vital than it once was to be able to parade them about directly after their accession. Three, mourning has become, and particularly during the 19th century, a virtual festival of black fabrics that are expected to be worn for weeks and strewn about the place. So a speedy coronation for a successor would all look a bit sad, as all of the guests and Westminster Abbey was still expected to be decked out in deep mourning. Four, and this is a big one, and that's that the whole thing is getting more and more elaborate. There are simply more bells and whistles. The invite list is more international, as the event has come to function as a diplomatic tool. All of this simply takes more time than it would have done in, say, the 13th century. George V was the British monarch during World War I, and his cousin was Wilhelm II, the monarch and figurehead of Britain's enemy. In 1917, George V became the first monarch of the House of Windsor. Previously, the Germanic roots of the family had been clear, as it had been named the House of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha. But anti-German sentiment from the British public is believed to have spurred on the name change, and Windsor is the name that is still used by our current monarch. George V died on the 20th of January 1936, and he was succeeded by his eldest son. King Edward VIII would not have his coronation, and this is said to be because of his intended bride, the twice-divorced American Wallis Simpson, and these characteristics, both of them, appear to have scandalised in almost equal part. Edward would sign the instrument of abdication on the 10th of December 1936. Edward had no legitimate child to follow him onto the throne, so the succession to his abdicated throne passed to his brother, Albert. Albert chose to reign as King George VI. He was crowned on the day that had been intended for his brother's coronation, the 12th of May, 1937. His two daughters, the Princess Elizabeth, aged 11, and the Princess Margaret, aged 6, were spotted watching the proceedings from the Royal Gallery, with their paternal grandmother, Queen Mary, or Mary of Teck. Photographs show that the girls joined their parents on the Buckingham Palace balcony for the celebrations. King George VI was the last British monarch to be styled as Emperor of India, following the Indian Independence Act of 1947. No longer would the monarch be styled as HIM, which is His or Her Imperial Majesty, but instead HM, which is His or Her Majesty. King George VI died at age 56 on the 6th of February 1952. His daughter, Princess Elizabeth, was 25 years old when she ascended to her father's throne. Queen Elizabeth II's coronation took place on the 2nd of June 1953. She is our longest reigning monarch so far and has been queen for 69 years, at least at the time of making this video in September 2021. Now, as long as no children predecease their parents, the future of the British Crown should and will proceed as follows. So next will be Charles. That's if he chooses to use that as his regnal name. He will become King Charles III. Then his eldest son, William, if he chooses to use that as his regnal name, will become King William V. William's eldest child and son, George, if he chooses that as his regnal name, will become King George VII, followed by his children in birth order in their case. And that's because following the Succession to the Crown Act of 2013, the British Crown is now inherited through absolute primogeniture. The firstborn child will inherit regardless of whether they are a son or a daughter. So, if Prince George has no children, Princess Charlotte and her children will then become the line. If she is childless, Prince Louis and his children would be the ones that come next. And thus, we reach the end of the journey of the succession to the crown and throne. But what do you think? Has this cleared up some timelines and succession questions for you? Or is there any aspect that you would like some more detail or an explanation for? As always, I'm looking forward to reading your conversations in the comments section underneath this video, or you can find me on social media. I'll leave links to all the other places you can find me on the internet in my description box. Follow me over on some or all of them so we can continue this conversation and start some others. I do hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful, and if you did, why not share it with some friends? Please also let me know you liked it by hitting the thumbs up. Please make sure you are subscribed to the channel, and if you think you're subscribed, do have a little check now to make sure that YouTube hasn't mysteriously unsubscribed you. While you're there, checking, subscribing, maybe resubscribing, why not hit the bell icon beside the subscribe button so that YouTube tells you when I've next uploaded? And can I recommend that you hit notify for all? I do think that some people are not being notified when I upload, because I am seeing some comments of people thinking that I have been away for a while when I have been here every week. But with that being said, I hope you're going to have a great day, whatever you're doing, and I look forward to speaking to you all in my next video. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye for now.